He gave a ride to a pregnant hitchhiker in the rain. He never expected her baby would one day save his life. Drenched in rain and blinking furiously against the sleet, Adam slammed the brakes as the woman beside him let out a guttural cry and doubled over in pain. Her water had broken. He could see the dark stain spreading across her worn jeans mixing with rainwater. "Jesus Christ, are you having the baby now?" he shouted, panic clawing its way up his throat. Thunder cracked. "No cell service, no hospitals for miles. Don't leave me," she gasped. "Please, I have no one else." He climbed back in, gripped the wheel, and floored it into the storm. The steering wheel groaned under Adam Riley's grip as he took a sharp left onto the old county road, ignoring the GPS's protests. The dashboard's navigation still clung to the last programmed address, Hartford County Courthouse, now hours behind him, both physically and mentally. A fresh rain started tapping against the windshield, slow and inconsistent like a nervous knock. He didn't bother with the wipers. Let the rain come. Let it soak through everything. Adam wasn't sure what he was doing, just that he needed to be anywhere but there. The courtroom had been gray. Not just the walls or the judge's robes, but the atmosphere itself. Sterile, indifferent. A courtroom should have been where truth mattered, where facts got you somewhere. But he had learned, the hard way, that justice was something bought, buried or delayed into dust. The judge didn't even look at him when he read the verdict. Case closed. Petition denied. Motion dismissed. Adam had stood there blinking, not quite able to believe it. Again. Third time. No hearing, no trial. Just silence. A ruling made in chambers. A final nail. He hadn't shouted. That surprised him. No angry outburst. No thrown chair. No scene. Just a hollow nod and a hand shoved into the pocket of his coat, wrapping around the worn edge of the photograph he always kept there. Rachel. Her smile still shone through the smudged corners. A candid moment. Her in a yellow sweatshirt, laughing with coffee foam on her lip, completely unaware he was taking the picture. That had been 3 weeks before the surgery. 4 before the apology that never came. "We did everything we could." That was the hospital's statement, except they hadn't. A nurse had told him quietly and later that the anesthesiologist had walked out for 15 minutes, left an intern in charge, no monitor alarms. By the time someone noticed, Rachel's brain had gone too long without oxygen. They brought her back, technically, but not really. For 6 months he lived with the shell of her, breathing, heart beating but gone. And when she died, the hospital sent a condolence letter that read like a corporate press release. So yes, he'd sued. He thought it would help. He thought someone would say, "You were right. They failed her. You deserve something. Justice, closure, compensation. Something." But all he got was, "Case closed." So now he drove. He wasn't sure when he crossed into this back road stretch of countryside. Route 27, the sign had read. Somewhere, between guilt and exhaustion. He passed empty fields, faded barns, and flickering gas stations. The kind of scenery that seemed allergic to time. He hadn't eaten since morning. A half-drunk bottle of water sat in the cup holder beside a crumpled receipt from the courthouse parking garage. 1 week, it said. He'd paid for a full week as if he really thought he'd need it. His cell buzzed on the passenger seat. Unknown number. He let it ring. Then another. Voicemail. Delete. He didn't want to talk. Not to his sister, not to the lawyers, not to the only friend who still called him brother like it meant something. He just wanted silence. A sudden gust of rain swept across the windshield, forcing him to finally flick the wipers on. The rhythmic squeak broke the stillness, sharp and grating. That's when he saw her. A red blur on the shoulder of the road. A person, no, a woman, standing with one hand raised, shielding her eyes from the downpour. Her clothes were soaked. A torn poncho clung to her like a second skin. She held one hand over her belly protectively as if guarding something fragile from the storm. Adam's foot hovered over the brake. He never picked up hitchhikers. Not since college. not since Rachel told him stories about women who disappeared on nights like this. But there was something about the way this woman stood, proud, desperate, and absolutely alone. He passed her, drove 10 more feet. 20. 30. Keep going. She's not your problem. But still, he saw her in the rearview mirror, motionless in the rain. Something twisted in his gut. Damn it, he muttered, pulling to the shoulder. He reversed slowly until he was beside her. He rolled down the passenger window, rain spraying into the car. "You okay?" he called. The woman stepped closer, cautiously. Her face was pale, lips trembling. She looked young, maybe late 20s. Her hair was plastered to her skull in thick, wet ropes. Dark circles bloomed beneath her eyes. "I just need a ride," she said, almost too quietly to hear. "Not far, just to town." He glanced at her belly. Definitely pregnant, far along. 8 months, more? No one could come get you? He asked. She shook her head. "I have no one." She didn't blink, didn't explain. Adam hesitated, but he unlocked the door. "Get in." She climbed into the car slowly, wincing slightly as she lowered herself into the seat. Water dripped from her clothes onto the floor mat. The interior instantly filled with the sharp scent of wet earth and something else. Hospital antiseptic? Maybe. Or was that his imagination? He turned the heat on full blast. "Thanks," she said. "No problem." They drove for a few minutes in silence. "I'm Adam," he offered finally. "Lena," she replied. Her voice was hoarse. "Where you headed?" "Crossfield," she said. "The next town. That's still 30 miles. I can pay for gas," she added quickly, reaching into the pocket of her coat. "No need," Adam said. "Just long as you're okay." "I will be." The words didn't reassure him. He glanced sideways at her. Her eyes were distant, but alert, scanning the trees, the road, the mirrors as if someone might follow. Her hands were clenched in her lap. "You running from something?" he asked before he could stop himself. She turned to him, not surprised by the question. "Just tired." "Not something," she said. "Someone." Adam nodded slowly. Didn't press. After all, he was running too. The rain picked up again, hammering the roof of the car in a relentless rhythm. The wipers worked overtime. "You okay back there?" he asked as they passed the Welcome to Cross County sign. Lena didn't answer at first. Her breathing had become shallow. Adam looked over and saw her eyes tightly shut, lips pressed in a firm line. "Lena?" She winced. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Her hand went to her belly again, this time more urgently. Adam's stomach dropped. Are you in labor?" "No," she said, but her voice cracked. He pulled over without thinking, hazard lights blinking red against the rain. "Tell me the truth." She shook her head violently. "No hospitals, please. They'll find me. Just get me to Crossfield." "Who's they?" Lena didn't answer. Her face twisted again, this time in visible pain. Then, without warning, a gush of water soaked the passenger seat. Adam stared. "Lena," she gasped, clutching her side. "My water just broke." Adam didn't remember making the decision to keep driving. The car simply moved, his hands working the wheel on instinct while his brain scrambled to keep up with what was happening. Rain pounded the roof, harder now, like fists from the sky. The wipers could barely keep up as they swished back and forth in a desperate rhythm. Beside him, Lena was breathing fast. Too fast. "Okay," Adam said, trying to keep his voice steady, trying to sound like someone who knew what the hell he was doing. "Just hang on. We're about 20, maybe 30 minutes from Crossfield, depending on the roads." "Too far," she muttered, curling forward over her belly. "She's coming now." "She?" "The baby," she hissed through clenched teeth. "It's a girl." Adam swallowed hard, gripping the wheel tighter. He wasn't built for this. He was an insurance claims adjuster. He didn't do crises, didn't do chaos, not anymore. That part of him had died with Rachel. But here he was on a storm-racked back road in the middle of nowhere, with a pregnant woman whose water had just broken in his passenger seat. He wasn't sure if he was living someone else's nightmare, or his own redemption. "Do you feel the contractions?" he asked. "Are they close together?" Lena let out a sharp breath. "You read a book on this or something?" He snorted, despite the tension. "Married a woman who wanted 5 kids. We made it to almost 1. She turned her head to him, her wet hair sticking to her cheek. "What happened?" Adam didn't answer. He remembered the yellow hospital wristband, the beep of a monitor, the sterile smell of the ICU. Rachel's chest rising and falling in, slow mechanical rhythm, the dull buzz of the ventilator doing all the breathing for her, and that photo in his wallet. Always that photo, her alive, vibrant. Before the mistake, the red light of the traffic signal blinked in the distance. No cross traffic, just an empty junction in a town too small for stop signs to matter. He blew through it. "Why no hospital?" he asked quietly. Lena was silent for a beat too long. Then, "Because if I go to one, they'll report it and he'll find me." "Who?" "My ex." Adam raised an eyebrow. "Is he the father?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Biologically, maybe. Morally, no." "Was he abusive?" The question hung between them like a match above gasoline. "Yes," she said, barely a whisper. "But not just to me." Adam's jaw clenched. "You did the right thing leaving." "I know. Doesn't make it less terrifying." He nodded, jaw tightening. "Is he looking for you?" "He always said if I ever ran, he'd find me. He's the kind of man who knows people. He's got money, influence. I couldn't risk staying where anyone knew my name." "So you've been on the road?" She nodded. 3 weeks now, sleeping in shelters, some nights in the back of a Greyhound station, waiting tables under fake names for tips. It's not like I planned any of this. Adam exhaled slowly. No one ever does. The road narrowed into a 2-lane curve flanked by tall pine trees that loomed like silent watchers. The rain hadn't let up. Thunder cracked overhead again, closer now. Adam's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Why Crossfield?" he asked. "I found a women's shelter there," Lena said, breathing heavily. "They said they don't ask questions. Just give you a bed, food, and some help getting on your feet. I was supposed to get there before—" Her sentence broke into a groan. "Contraction?" Adam asked. She nodded, her face twisted in pain. He glanced at the clock. "Just under 3 minutes since the last one. That was bad, right? That meant close. That meant imminent." His hands trembled slightly, so he pulled the car over again to the shoulder. A clearing in the trees opened to an abandoned rest stop with a roofed picnic area. "Why are we stopping?" she gasped. "You need to lie down. That baby's not waiting. We may have to deliver right here." Lena's eyes widened. "You're not serious." "I wish I wasn't." He got out and ran to her side, rain soaking through his jacket within seconds. He opened the door and she tried to stand, but her knees buckled. He caught her just in time. "I got you," he said, slipping an arm around her back. She didn't protest, just leaned into him, trembling. He guided her under the covered structure, setting his coat on the weathered wooden bench before helping her lie down. The concrete beneath was cold, but better than nothing. The roof above kept the worst of the rain out. "I'm not doing this here," she whispered. "I can't. This isn't right. This wasn't the plan." Adam knelt beside her, soaked and shivering. "Plans are for people with guarantees. Right now, we do what we have to do." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, something softened in her. A flicker of trust. Time blurred. Adam followed what he could remember from the pamphlets Rachel used to read aloud during their someday talks. He used napkins from the glove compartment, bottled water from his trunk, and the flashlight on his phone to see. The rain let up slightly, a brief mercy from the storm. Lena gripped his hand through every contraction. Her strength stunned him. She didn't scream, she didn't break. She just bore down. "I can't," she whispered at one point, drenched in sweat, hair plastered to her forehead. "You can," he said, wiping her brow with a sleeve. "You already are." And then, just like that, after hours that felt like lifetimes, there was a cry. Sharp. Small. Alive. He stared in awe as he gently held the squirming infant, blinking up at him with slate-gray eyes. "It's her," Lena whispered, tears spilling from her cheeks. "It's really her." Adam's hands trembled. "She's perfect." He wrapped the baby in his flannel overshirt and handed her gently to Lena, who cradled her like something made of light and glass. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaking. "You don't know what this means." Adam didn't respond, because he did know. Back at the car, Lena and the baby were bundled in the passenger seat, a dry blanket Adam kept in the trunk wrapped around them both. He found an open signal on the edge of the county line and called the local clinic. They said they'd alert a nurse practitioner at the Crossfield Satellite ER. The storm had passed. The road glistened silver under the clearing sky. As he drove again, a small hand curled around his pinky finger. Tiny, strong. Lena watched silently from the passenger seat, her eyes no longer afraid, just tired. "What's her name?" Adam asked. Lena looked down at the bundle in her arms, then softly, "Hope." The sun was already low when they reached the edge of Crossfield, a modest town etched into a forgotten part of the state, nestled among fields that used to be farmed and storefronts that hadn't seen customers in years. A water tower loomed, over the road like a rusted sentinel, bearing the town's name in peeling white paint. Adam rolled past a shuttered gas station, a diner with a hand-painted closed sign, and a laundromat flickering with fluorescent light. Lena stirred beside him. The baby bundled in the blanket, cradled against her chest. She looked spent, eyes half-lidded, skin pale and damp, but her arms held tight to the newborn in a way that spoke of instinct, not weakness. "You sure you want to do this alone?" Adam asked quietly, eyes fixed on the road. Lena gave him a look, not defiant but firm. "You've already done enough. More than I ever expected." Adam's knuckles tightened on the wheel. "I'm not looking for thanks. I just don't want to drop you somewhere unsafe." "It's not unsafe," she replied. "It's a shelter for women who need a way out." She didn't need to finish the sentence. He understood. "It's off Riverton Avenue," she added. "It should be on the left after the post office." Adam followed her directions through a web of narrow side streets until he spotted the small discreet sign hanging from an old wooden fence. Haven House, Women and Children's Crisis Shelter. The building behind it was modest, a weathered, Victorian-painted soft blue, porch lights glowing faintly in the growing dusk. A small garden grew along the front walk, wild but cared for, and the welcome mat on the steps wasn't just for show. It felt lived in. Adam parked by the curb. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. "You sure this is the right place?" he asked. She gave a faint nod. He glanced at her again, watching the way her fingers gently stroked the baby's tiny hand. He hated the thought of leaving her here, not because it wasn't safe, but because for the first time in months he felt like he was needed, like someone's life had actually changed because of something he did. Maybe that meant more than justice ever could. "I'll help you in," he said, stepping out. Inside, the shelter was warm, literally and figuratively. The hallway smelled, faintly of lavender and laundry detergent, and the worn hardwood floors creaked gently underfoot. A woman in her late 50s, hair pulled into a tight bun, approached them. Her name tag read, Julia, shelter director. Her sharp eyes softened the moment she saw Lena cradling the baby. "Oh, honey," Julia breathed. Come in, come in. My goodness, how far along are you?" Lena offered a weary smile. She was born about 2 hours ago, on the side of the road. Julia blinked. "You delivered her yourself?" Adam raised a hand. "Technically, I did, but Lena did all the work. Julia looked at him for a moment as if measuring something unspoken. She nodded once, curtly, then returned her attention to Lena. "We'll get you into a private room. You're safe now. No one will ask questions. You're not ready to answer." Lena's eyes welled up again. "Thank you." Julia placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let's get you settled. We've got a nurse volunteer who can check on you both, and formula, if you need it." Lena hesitated. "I want to try breastfeeding." Julia smiled. "Good. Let's get you everything you need." Adam stood in the hallway, unsure whether to follow, speak, or turn and leave. A weight pressed against his chest, something tangled between guilt, relief, and a strange emptiness he hadn't expected. Lena turned toward him, still holding her daughter close. "She wouldn't be here without you," she said. Adam offered a weak smile. "Neither would I." Their eyes held for a moment, long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. Gratitude, maybe, or understanding, or simply that quiet acknowledgement two people share when they've walked through fire together and somehow come out breathing. "You're going to be a good mom," he said. Lena didn't smile at that, but her eyes sparkled with something he hadn't seen before. Hope, maybe, or pride. "Take care, Adam," she said. Then she disappeared down the hallway, following Julia and the warm light spilling from the shelter's rooms. And just like that, she was gone. The ride back to the motel was silent. Adam checked into a roadside place on the edge of town, peeling paint. Faded curtains, a TV that only got 3 channels, and a vending machine that ate his dollar. He didn't care. It had a bed. And silence. He collapsed backward onto the mattress, arms splayed out, staring at the ceiling fan spinning, slowly above him. He hadn't realized until that moment just how exhausted he was. His body ached in places he didn't even know had tensed up. His shoulders, his lower back, his jaw, tight from hours of being alert, of caring, of doing something. That mattered. He should have felt relief, but instead he just felt hollow. Because for a few brief hours he wasn't alone. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't stuck in the past, chasing a courtroom fantasy of justice that had never been real. He had been present, focused, useful. And now, with Lena safe and hope born, that clarity had vanished. Later that night, he found himself staring at the crumpled photograph of Rachel again. The edges were torn. One corner had gotten damp from the earlier storm, the ink bleeding slightly. But her smile remained, pure, unknowing, as if she were frozen in a moment where life still made sense. "I helped someone today," he whispered to her photo. "You'd like her. She's tough, smart, scared, but not broken." He traced her face with a finger. She named her Hope. Kind of poetic, huh? He closed his eyes, and for the first time in months, the weight pressing on his chest didn't crush him. It simply rested there, bearable. The next morning, a knock on his motel door startled him from a dream he couldn't remember. He opened it to find a small girl, maybe 10 years old, with a clipboard and a purple hoodie that read, "Haven House, Volunteer." "You Adam?" she asked, chewing a piece of gum. "Yeah?" The girl handed him a folded piece of notebook paper. She said you'd understand. He took it. The girl gave him a mock salute and skipped off. He unfolded the paper. In neat, slightly shaky handwriting, it read, "Adam, we're okay. The nurse says Hope's healthy and they're helping me get legal stuff sorted. I still don't know what comes next, but I know I've started over. Thank you for stopping that night, for seeing me. Lena P.S. If you're still around, come, visit. Hope kicks more than she cries. She's already a fighter." Adam sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, the letter in his lap. He stared at it for a long time, then looked out the window. The morning sun had started to burn off the remnants of the storm. Crossfield shimmered quietly in the early light. Quiet, unassuming, full of nothing, and maybe something. He rubbed his thumb over the last line again. She's already a fighter. He smiled. So was her mother. 3 days had passed since Lena gave birth to Hope. And in that time, life at Haven House had settled into a new rhythm, a fragile kind of normal, as tentative as spring frost. Mornings began with soft voices and the smell of instant coffee drifting from the kitchen. Volunteers came and went with paper bags full of diapers and warm donated meals. Julia, ever watchful, ran the place like a fortress with a heart. Lena felt safe, which was something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Safe enough to rest, safe enough to breathe, but not quite safe enough to forget. She sat in the small window nook of her room on the second floor, cradling Hope, who nursed quietly beneath a flannel blanket. Outside, sunlight filtered through the trees, casting trembling shadows on the sidewalk below. Hope's tiny fingers curled against her chest, and Lena watched her with equal parts wonder and fear. Not fear of the baby, never that. Fear of what? Waited outside this haven, fear that this peace wouldn't last. Downstairs, Julia sat at the front desk, sorting through envelopes and printouts from the town's battered laser printer. She glanced up at the surveillance monitor, a grainy black and white screen showing the front gate and driveway. She froze. A gray sedan sat idling across the street. Not parked, just sitting there, watching. Lena didn't hear the knock at first. She was half asleep with Hope on her shoulder, the gentle hum of breath lulling them both into a kind of fragile stillness. The second knock was firmer. "Lena," came Julia's voice from the other side, calm but tight. "Can I talk to you? For a minute?" Lena sat up, heart already hammering. She pulled Hope a little closer. "Come in." Julia stepped inside and closed the door softly behind her. "There's a car out front," she said. Gray sedan. Been sitting there a while. Lena felt the chill before the words even landed. "Did you see the driver?" "Tinted windows," Julia replied. "But I took a walk with one of the volunteers, got close enough to get a partial plate." "Was it him?" "I can't say for sure." Julia sat down on the edge of the bed. "But it matches the kind of vehicle you described in your intake form." Lena's throat felt suddenly dry. "What do we do?" "We stay calm," Julia said. "This shelter's address isn't listed publicly. The town council helps us keep it private. If he found you, it means he was following you before you came here." Lena's stomach turned. "Oh, God." "Breathe," Julia said, reaching for her hand. "I've already notified Officer Reeves. She's the town's domestic violence liaison. She'll come by and assess the situation discreetly. What if he's waiting for me to come outside?" "Then you don't," Julia said simply. "We lock down the shelter and follow protocol." Across town, Adam was sipping coffee at the diner on Main Street, one of the only places still, serving fresh eggs and conversation. The waitress had just refilled his cup when his phone buzzed with a text from a number he'd memorized far too quickly. "Lena, I think he's here." Adam stood so fast he knocked over his mug. Back at Haven House, Officer Mallory Reeves arrived in plain clothes, jeans, windbreaker, and a badge hidden in her wallet. She was ex-military, tall, sharp-eyed, and moved like someone used to not being noticed until it was too late. She stood with Lena and Julia in the small front parlor, blinds drawn. "He hasn't left," Julia said, glancing at the monitor again. 2 hours now. Lena was pale, her arms tightly wrapped around Hope, who fussed softly at the tension in the room. Mallory took a notebook from her pocket. "Describe him again for me." "Blake," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tall, blonde. Used to be lean, but last time I saw him he'd gotten bulkier. Gym-obsessed. Always wore a silver watch. Rolex, maybe. Had initials on the inside. BN. Any known weapons? He owned a gun. Legally. But he used his fists first." Mallory nodded slowly, taking notes. "Restraining orders?" Lena laughed bitterly. "Tried. He had a lawyer who made it disappear." Julia's jaw tightened. "We'll run the plate," Mallory said, "but that'll take a few hours. Until then, I want you to stay indoors, preferably upstairs. You'll have staff rotating shifts watching the monitors. Don't open the front door to anyone you don't know personally." Lena nodded. Should. I call Adam? You should, Julia said before Mallory could reply. He's invested. And he's got instincts. Lena hesitated, but the need outweighed the pride. She dialed. Adam arrived in 15 minutes flat. When Julia opened the door to let him in, his eyes went straight to Lena. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Hope's fine too. Is it him? We don't know for sure, Julia said. But it feels off. Adam turned to Mallory. What can I do? You any good behind the wheel? Adam raised an eyebrow. I've worked in insurance. I know how to make a car disappear. Mallory smirked. We might use that. That evening, as dusk settled again over the town, the gray sedan was still there, still idling. Mallory paced inside the shelter with her radio, clipped low on her belt. At 7:42 p.m., she turned to Julia. We're going to spook him. Julia raised a brow. How? Smoke him out. If he's waiting for Lena to come out, we give him something that looks like her. Julia's eyes narrowed. Decoy? Mallory nodded. Adam stepped forward. I'll drive. An hour later, a woman wearing Lena's red poncho and carrying a bundle that looked like a swaddled baby exited the front door. Her stride was stiff, intentional. The kind of cautious walk Lena had when she was exhausted. Adam opened the passenger door of his car and helped her in with practiced ease. Inside the sedan across the street, the driver didn't move, but the engine revved. Adam pulled away slowly, taking the route Lena had originally taken into town. Winding roads, sparse traffic, easy to follow. 10 seconds later, the gray sedan pulled out too. From the shelter security monitor, Mallory watched it all unfold. Got him, she muttered. She grabbed her radio. This is Officer Reeves. Tail in motion. Plate confirms match to prior DV case flagged in county registry. Requesting backup en route to Y10. Suspect vehicle is a gray 2015 Toyota Avalon. Driver may be Blake Nathaniel, formerly of Grand Rapids. Her eyes flicked back to Lena. We've got him now. Adam led the gray sedan through a series of slow rural turns, never speeding, never making it obvious, but always watching in the rear view. The other car stayed 2 lengths behind. Creep, the decoy muttered. She was one of the shelter's interns, a college student named Mia with a spine of steel. He's hungry, Adam said. Predators are always patient until they think they're close. Mia adjusted the fake bundle in her arms. Well, let's give him a surprise. 2 miles ahead, blue and red lights flared to life behind a row of trees. 2 unmarked cruisers pulled out onto the road. Adam slowed. The gray sedan hesitated, then it gunned the gas. Wrong move. Tires screeched. One cruiser shot forward and cut the sedan off with precision. Another rammed the back bumper to stop its escape. The Avalon spun slightly and stalled, its wheels spinning uselessly in wet gravel. Adam pulled to the side and watched as officers drew weapons and shouted commands. Seconds later, the driver was pulled from the car. Tall, blonde, muscular. A Rolex glinted on his wrist as they cuffed him. Mia looked over at Adam. So, that's the guy? Adam didn't answer. He was already calling Lena. Back at Haven House, Lena answered on the first ring. It's over, Adam said simply. Lena sank onto the bed, her legs giving out beneath her. Hope stirred gently against her chest, blinking, up at her mother with sleepy confusion. Lena kissed her forehead, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, she whispered the word aloud. Safe. The morning after Blake's arrest dawned gray and windswept. Rain tapped against the windows of Haven House like timid fingers, the kind of soft drizzle that blurred the lines between the past and the present. Lena stood at the bathroom mirror, holding a brush in one hand and trying to detangle her hair with the other. She stared at her reflection, but all she could see were fragments of the girl she'd been, the woman she was trying to become, and the mother she wasn't sure she was ready to be. Hope slept soundly in the crib behind her, one fist curled near her cheek, rising and falling with each tiny breath. She looked peaceful, unaware that the man who had terrified Lena for over a year now sat in a jail cell. But peace wasn't what Lena felt. Not yet. Her hands trembled as she dragged the brush through another knot. The pain was minor, but she welcomed, though it reminded her she was still here, still real. A knock at the door startled her. Julia's voice followed. "Lena? You've got a visitor." Lena tensed. "Who?" There was a pause. "Adam." Lena set the brush down and exhaled slowly. She wasn't sure if she felt ready to see him again, not after everything that had happened last night, not with the hurricane of emotions still roaring quietly inside her. But something in her chest tugged at her, and she went anyway. Adam sat, in the small sunroom at the back of Haven House, sipping from a chipped ceramic mug. He was staring out the window, watching the rain blur the garden beyond the glass. He looked different in the daylight, less rugged, more weathered, like a soldier returned from a battle he didn't talk about. Lena hesitated in the doorway. He turned, and their eyes met. "Hey," he said, setting the mug down. "Hey." She stepped into the room and sat across from him. The silence between them was familiar now, heavy but not uncomfortable. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I haven't exhaled in weeks," she said. "But last night helped." Adam nodded slowly. "Blake won't get out easy. There's enough evidence to hold him this time, especially with the stalking charge added." "I keep waiting for the catch," she admitted, like someone's going to say it was all a mistake and I'll wake up back in that trailer afraid to speak too loud. Adam's jaw clenched. "You won't." "How can you be sure?" He looked at her, really looked. "Because you're not that woman anymore." Lena blinked hard, her throat tight. "I didn't even recognize myself when I got here," she said. "I still don't, sometimes." Adam smiled faintly. "Maybe that's a good thing." They sat for a while longer, watching the rain. Lena reached for her tea, lukewarm now, but held the cup in both hands like a shield. "You've been quiet," she said. "Since the arrest." Adam looked down, just thinking. "About what?" He hesitated. She leaned forward. "Adam." He exhaled slowly, then met her gaze. "You and Hope. You pulled me out of something. Something dark." Lena's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He looked past her for a moment as if conjuring someone who wasn't there. "My fiancée, Rachel. She died 6 months ago. Drunk driver. She was 3 blocks from home." Lena felt her chest cave in. "I didn't know." "I don't talk about it," he said. "But when I found you on the road that night, something snapped back into place. Like, maybe helping you was my second chance to save someone, to matter again." Lena reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "You do matter," she said. His eyes welled, but he didn't blink. Didn't flinch. "I was stuck," he admitted. "Grief does that. You start living in a memory, in a loop. But you and Hope, you pulled me forward." Lena's voice was soft. "And you pulled me out." Their hands remained entwined across the table. Later that afternoon, Lena sat with Julia in the shelter's small office. Paperwork filled the desk between them. Legal forms, social service records, custody filings, and housing applications. "This is going to feel overwhelming," Julia said gently. "But it's the beginning of your real life." Lena nodded, flipping through the first form. "And there's no going back now." "Would you want to?" Lena thought about it. Blake's rage, the way he'd isolate her, the bruises hidden beneath makeup, the money he'd control, the names he'd call her, the fear that had shaped every hour of her day. "No," she whispered. "Never again." Meanwhile, Adam found himself driving aimlessly around Crossfield, ending up at the cemetery on the edge of town. Rachel wasn't buried here, but that didn't matter. He parked beneath a row of sycamores and walked until he found an empty bench. The rain had stopped, but the clouds lingered, low and solemn. He sat and pulled the worn photo from his wallet, Rachel smiling in front of the apple orchard where he'd proposed. He stared at her face for a long time. "I think I've got to let you go," he said, voice barely audible. "Not to forget. Never that. but to stop waiting for you to come back. His eyes stung, but he kept speaking. I helped someone, Rach. A woman who's been through hell, and she's got this baby. This beautiful little fighter named Hope. They changed something in me. I think, if you were here, you'd tell me to stop punishing myself. A gust of wind rustled the trees around him. I'm still carrying you, he whispered. But maybe I can carry her too. Just in a different way. He tucked the photo back into his wallet and stood. As he walked back to the truck, he felt lighter, not healed, but open. That evening, Lena stood outside, on the porch of Haven House, watching the clouds peel away to reveal a sliver of dusk blue sky. Hope was in her arms, her tiny eyes fluttering open, then closed again. She heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel and turned. Adam was there, hands in his jacket pockets, face illuminated by the porch light. I was hoping I'd see you again today, she said. I went to say goodbye to someone, he replied. Lena nodded slowly. Rachel? Yeah. And? He stepped closer. And I think I'm ready to stop living in the past. Lena swallowed hard. What does that mean? Adam looked at her, eyes clear. It means I want to be here. For you. For Hope. If you'll let me. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, quietly she said, come inside. And this time it wasn't out of fear. It was out of hope. The courtroom smelled faintly of lemon polish and old air. High windows let in slices of gray light, casting long shadows across the scuffed wood floor. Lena sat on the wooden bench, back straight but stiff, her arms wrapped protectively around, her torso as if bracing against more than just the cold. Hope slept in her carrier beside her, bundled tightly in a soft yellow blanket. Every now and then the baby made a quiet noise. A coo, a sigh, the subtle murmurs of an infant still learning the world. Lena wasn't sure if she was ready to face hers. Julia sat next to her, offering quiet strength. And just behind them, Adam had taken a seat in the second row. He didn't speak, didn't move much. But his presence was a constant, solid and grounding. Lena's attorney, a soft-spoken legal aid volunteer named Nadine Cho, leaned in and whispered, It's a procedural hearing. The judge just needs to review the protective order extensions, your housing status, and the temporary custody motion. You've already done the hard part. Lena nodded, though her pulse said otherwise, because even here, surrounded by law and paper and people who believed her, she still felt it. That coiled knot of dread, the one that whispered, Blake could still win. He always finds a way. Then the bailiff called her name. The judge was a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked painful. She read the documents with precision, her reading, glasses perched low on her nose. Every so often she made a note with a fountain pen, her movements deliberate. Lena stood when addressed, answering questions clearly, but softly. Yes, Your Honor. No, I've had no contact with Mr. Nathaniel since the arrest. I am pursuing full custody, yes. When the judge asked about her safety, Lena paused, then said something she hadn't been able to utter in a courtroom before. I don't feel afraid anymore. Not here. Not since I left. Julia squeezed her hand. Adam met her eyes from behind and gave a faint nod. It was enough. The judge issued a continuation of the emergency order and recommended Lena for a transitional housing program that would allow her to remain at Haven House for up to 90 days while the custody petition moved forward. It was a small win, but to Lena, it felt like her first breath in months. Back at Haven House, Lena stepped into her room, gently unstrapped Hope from the carrier, and placed her in the bassinet. She watched her daughter's small chest rise and fall, the tiniest, steadiest miracle she'd ever known. Her knees gave out, and she sank to the floor beside the crib, forehead resting against its edge. She didn't cry. Not exactly. It was more like release, a deep exhale from the bones, the kind of quiet that lives beneath survival. A knock came at the door. Adam. I didn't mean to intrude, he said. Just wanted to see if you needed anything. She looked up at him, eyes red, but clear. "I don't know what I need." "That's okay," he said. "I brought soup." She laughed once, just a breath of it, but it was real. "I could eat," she admitted. He sat on the edge of the bed and opened the thermos. The room filled with the scent of chicken and ginger, comfort food. As she ate, Adam spoke gently. "What happens next?" "The lawyer says the full custody hearing is in 2 weeks, and Blake's preliminary hearing for stalking and violation of protective order is next month. And in the meantime, I try to live," she said. "Take it, day by day. That's all any of us are doing," he replied. She gave him a look, searching, vulnerable. "Are you really in this with me?" Adam didn't hesitate. "I am." The days passed with surprising rhythm. Lena began helping around the shelter, folding, donated clothes, making coffee for new arrivals, gently rocking other people's crying babies while holding her own. She learned the names of the other women, their kids, their stories. Some had fled similar darkness. Others had wandered into misfortune. She didn't feel alone here. For the first time in years, she belonged somewhere. Hope grew stronger every day, her tiny fingers now able to grasp Lena's pinky with surprising determination. Her cry was distinct, sharp and defiant, not weak. Lena often thought that the name Hope had chosen her daughter long before she had. One night, while rocking Hope near the kitchen window, Julia approached her with a folded letter. "It's from your lawyer," she said, voice cautious. "It's not all good news." Lena took the envelope and slowly opened it, fingers trembling before her eyes had even scanned the contents. At the top was a bolded line. Notice of response to custody. Petition, contesting party. Blake Nathaniel he had filed for shared custody. "No," Lena whispered. "No, no, no." Julia rubbed her back. "It's not unusual, especially when an abuser's trying to maintain control. But he's in jail." Julia's voice was steady. "And the system still allows him to contest your rights until a judge rules otherwise." Lena's hands shook as she sat down at the table, Hope starting to squirm from the unease in her arms. "He never wanted her," she said. "He called her a mistake. He said if I didn't get rid of her, he'd do it himself." Julia sat across from her. "We'll tell the court that, every word. We have Officer Reeves's report, and the shelter records, and your medical files. His history of violence will work against him." "But he has money," Lena whispered. "And lawyers. And charm." Julia gave her a firm look. "And you have truth." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, mind racing with what-if scenarios. Could he win? Could a court really believe he deserved to be in her daughter's life? Could charm and dollars outweigh bruises and trauma? At 3:42 a.m., she went downstairs to the common room, wrapped in a blanket. Adam was already there, a notebook open on his lap. "You too?" he asked. She nodded, eyes hollow. "He filed for custody." Adam's expression darkened. "That's insane." She sank into the couch beside him. "He doesn't want Hope. He just wants to ruin me." "He won't," Adam said, voice sharp, with conviction. "We'll fight him, with everything we've got." She turned to him, something unraveling in her face. "I'm so tired of fighting." Adam hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Then let me do some of the fighting for you." The next morning, Lena returned to the legal office with Nadine. They built their case meticulously. Evidence of abuse, witness statements, Lena's injuries documented in her medical charts. Officer Reeves had also submitted an affidavit, detailing Blake's suspicious behavior, the surveillance footage, and the illegal attempt to track Lena's movements. "Judges are human," Nadine explained. "But with everything we have, no, sane court will give him custody. Not even supervised. You just have to keep showing up, keep being the mother you already are." Lena nodded, jaw tight. She would, no matter how hard it got. Because this time, she wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for Hope's. That evening, she fed her daughter slowly, savoring every smile, every noise. Hope had started to gurgle now, little baby laughter, bubbling from her like soft bells. Lena rested her forehead against the baby's and whispered, "I'm going to protect you, no matter what." And from the hallway, Adam watched. He didn't intrude, didn't say a word, but his hand was clenched in a fist, and in that moment, he vowed something to himself too. If Blake Nathaniel ever made it out of jail, he'd have to go through him first. The letter came on a Tuesday. It arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address, slipped through the shelter's mail slot with a stack of donation receipts and pharmacy flyers. Julia was sorting the mail at the front desk when she saw Lena's name handwritten, sharp and slanted like the pen had been pressed too hard. She froze. Something about the ink, the pressure, the absence of a stamp. Julia knew that handwriting. She didn't call out. She didn't bring the envelope to Lena right away. Instead, she took it to her office, shut the door, and sat down heavily at her desk. After all, it wasn't just any name written on the envelope. It was Blake's handwriting. Even in jail, he'd found a way to reach her. Lena was feeding Hope when Julia came to her room. The baby had recently discovered applesauce and was determined to smear it across every available surface, including Lena's cheek. It made her laugh, which felt like an act of rebellion in itself. She looked up when Julia entered. "Got a minute?" Lena wiped her hands with a towel. "Sure." Julia handed her the envelope without a word. Lena stared at it. The second her eyes met the writing, the blood drained from her face. She didn't have to open it to know who had sent it, she knew. Her body knew. Even Hope grew suddenly quiet. Lena sat down on the edge of her bed and turned the envelope over in her hands. She didn't open it. Not yet. Just held it, as if it might burn her fingers. "How?" she finally whispered. "He's in jail." Julia sighed. "There's always someone willing to carry water for men like him. All it takes is a favor, a bribe, or a threat." Lena glanced up. "Should I even read it?" "That's your choice. But I had Officer Reeves look it over. No direct threats, just manipulation." "Of course," Lena muttered. "That's his specialty." She opened the envelope slowly, unfolding the single sheet of lined paper inside. The message was brief. "You'll never erase me, Lena, no matter how far you run or what lies you tell. She's mine too. Blood doesn't lie. A father doesn't forget. You're not the only one with rights." There was no signature. He didn't need one. The venom was unmistakable. Lena folded the letter once, then again, pressing the crease like she was trying to suffocate the words. She looked up, hollow-eyed. "He's not just fighting me in court," she said. "He's trying to get inside my head." Julia sat beside her. "Then don't let him." "That's easier said than done, but not impossible. You're here, aren't you?" That night, Lena found Adam on the front porch, hands tucked in the pockets of his hoodie, watching the clouds roll over the hills like slow-moving ghosts. He turned when he heard her approach. "You read it," he said. She nodded. It was him. Adam's jaw tightened. "I figured." Lena leaned against the railing beside him, arms crossed, eyes distant. "He said I'll never erase him. That hope is his too." Adam didn't say anything for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you believe that?" She hesitated. "The blood part, sure, but the rest? No. A father protects. A father doesn't use fear as a weapon." "You're right. But what if the court doesn't see it that way?" she whispered. "What if they see a man who wants equal parenting time? What if they believe his lies?" Adam shook his head. "Then we make sure the truth is louder." The next day was filled with preparations. Lena and Nadine began drafting a formal response to Blake's custody motion. The letter was submitted, as evidence along with Lena's statement and the details surrounding how the letter had arrived. Officer Reeves arranged for a handwriting analysis and confirmed the envelope hadn't gone through the postal service. Another small but telling piece of manipulation. Meanwhile, Lena wrote something she hadn't written in years, her own testimony, not just a form, not just a signature, A statement. 3 pages of handwritten, halting truth. Every word was a wound opened and laid bare. The time Blake slammed the cupboard door so hard it cracked, and said it was her fault for distracting him. The week he made, her eat dinner on the floor as punishment for backtalk. The day she found out she was pregnant and told him with hope in her voice, and the slap that followed. But she also wrote about how she'd changed, about Hope's first laugh, her first steps around the bassinet, her first sound that resembled mama, and about how, for the first time, she wanted to be more than a survivor. She wanted to be a mother. That evening, Lena sat on the floor with Hope, building towers of plastic blocks and letting her daughter knock them over with joyful squeals. It was simple, imperfect play, but it filled the room with warmth, with proof that life in all its quiet moments was still happening. Adam joined them after dinner, sitting cross-legged nearby and watching the scene with a soft smile. "She's getting so strong," he said, watching Hope crawl toward a new target, a crumpled sock. "She's got good genes," Lena said without thinking. Then she paused. "Adam did too. From you, I mean," he added quickly, to lighten the awkwardness. Lena laughed once, definitely not from Blake. Then, more seriously, she added, "But sometimes I worry. What if she does have something of his in her? Some part of that cruelty? That darkness?" Adam shook his head. "She has your fire. I see it every time she stares me down before stealing my coffee mug." Lena smiled. "That happened one time. And she's bold, smart, kind. That doesn't come from Blake." She looked over at Hope, who was now holding 2 blocks as if she were about to make a speech. "Thanks," Lena said quietly. "For what?" "For reminding me she's more than what he was. That I'm more." Adam looked at her. "You've always been more. You just couldn't see it before." The night grew late. After Hope was bathed and asleep, Lena stood at her window, staring into the dark yard beyond the shelter. The wind had picked up, and somewhere nearby a dog barked once, then went silent. She saw her reflection in the glass, tired eyes, unbrushed hair, oversized hoodie, and thought, would a judge see a mother here, or just a girl in over her head? She didn't hear Adam approach until his reflection appeared beside hers. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "But I'm trying." "That's enough for now." She turned to him. "I'm scared." "I know. What if I lose her?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he gently reached out and touched her shoulder, just enough to steady her. "You won't," he said. "Because we won't let that happen." Lena nodded. She didn't believe in miracles, but she did believe in people showing up. And Adam? He showed up every time. The courtroom was colder than she expected. Not temperature-wise, it was air-conditioned, yes, but it was something else. Something in the polished benches, the echo of each step, the way the judge's chair loomed like a throne in a kingdom Lena never asked to walk into. Cold like marble. Cold like a space where emotion was boiled down to facts on paper. She clutched Hope's pacifier in her fist like a talisman. It was early. The sky outside was still gray and damp from rain. Julia had driven her and Adam to the courthouse in silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. Nadine, Lena's lawyer, had met them at the side entrance and walked her through the last-minute details. "He may show up," Nadine had warned gently. "Jail doesn't stop someone from attending a custody hearing if the judge approves it. We asked for video conference only, but his attorney filed a motion for in-person appearance." Lena hadn't responded. What was there to say? She already knew he would come. Blake Nathaniel would never miss an opportunity to perform. Now, sitting at the plaintiff's table with Nadine beside her, Lena tried to breathe past the tightness in her chest. Her palms were damp. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small cloth, Hope's burp rag still smelling faintly of lavender and milk. She gripped it like a rope. "Try to stay composed," Nadine whispered. "Don't look at him if you don't have to. Focus on the judge, on Hope, on you. This is about your life, not his game." Lena nodded, but her heart pounded so loudly she swore everyone could hear it. Then the bailiff opened the door at the side of the courtroom, and Blake walked in. He wore a navy suit, pressed, tailored, as if it were plucked fresh from a dry cleaner, not from the duffel bag of an inmate. His hair was styled, his beard trimmed. No cuffs, no orange jumpsuit, no evidence of the months he had spent behind bars. He looked respectable, but his eyes were the same, dark, sharp, always watching. His lawyer, a sleek, smooth-talking man named Sullivan Graves, guided him to the defense table. Blake didn't look at Lena right away. That would be too obvious, too eager. Instead, he scanned the room with an air of false calm before letting his eyes finally land on her. He smiled. Not wide. Just a twitch at the corner of his mouth, as if to say, "You thought you were safe. You're not." Lena's breath caught, but she didn't look away. Let him see her fear, if only for a second. That wasn't weakness. That was proof she'd survived. The judge entered and called the court to order. She was different from the judge at Lena's earlier hearing. A younger woman, firm but fair, with glasses that slid down her nose and a voice that could cut glass. Today's hearing pertains to the contested custody petition in the matter of Lena Grace Holloway versus Blake D. Nathaniel. She began, flipping through the thick case file. Lena could see the packet Nadine had submitted, 3 inches thick. Her entire life, condensed to trauma, records, and typed declarations. Let the paper tell the truth, Lena thought. Let the truth speak louder than charm. Sullivan Graves stood first. He began with a speech Lena had dreaded. Polished, emotional in all the wrong places, full of redemption and reconciliation and a father's right to be present. Mr. Nathaniel acknowledges his past mistakes, Graves said, voice honey smooth. He has enrolled in anger management classes while in custody. He has expressed sincere interest in becoming a better man for the sake of his daughter. He is not asking to take the child from her mother, only to be given the chance to build a relationship, to know his child, to co-parent, as the law encourages. Lena felt the bile rise in her throat. Blake hadn't even held hope, not once. He'd spent more time choosing a suit for court than he ever had choosing baby formula, but the courtroom was built for neutrality. The judge scribbled notes. Graves continued talking. Lena wanted to scream. Then it was Nadine's turn. She stood with quiet dignity and opened a folder filled with exhibits. Your Honor, we are not dealing with a case of estranged co-parents seeking compromise. We are dealing with a man who actively and violently resisted fatherhood from the moment it was proposed. She presented the hospital record, Lena's bruises, the police report from Officer Reeves, the protective order, the tracking device on Lena's vehicle, the recorded voicemails, the threatening letter Blake had smuggled through a third party. This is not a man seeking redemption, Nadine continued. This is a man seeking control. Ms. Holloway is not denying his biological connection. She is denying his right to inflict further damage on a child he never wanted to begin with. Then Nadine looked at Lena. Would you like to speak? She asked. Lena's throat went dry. Her hands were trembling, but she stood. My name is Lena Holloway, she said, voice thin at first. And I've spent the last 2 years learning how to survive after believing I didn't deserve to. The courtroom fell silent. She cleared her throat and continued. I was 17 when I met Blake. He was older. He made me feel seen. He told me I was beautiful when I felt invisible. It wasn't until later that the insults started. The isolation. The threats. He told me no one else would love me. That I'd be nothing without him. She paused. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe, just maybe, it would bring something good into my life. But Blake didn't want that. He screamed. He hit. He told me to get rid of her. She reached into her pocket and held up Hope's pacifier. She saved me, Lena said, her voice shaking now but growing louder. She gave me the courage to leave. And now he wants to use her, to pull me back into the life I fought to escape. She looked directly at the judge. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for peace, for safety, for the chance to raise my daughter without fear that the man who hurt me will hurt her too. Silence. Then the judge spoke. Thank you, Ms. Holloway. The courtroom moved into a break for review and deliberation. Lena sat back down, heart hammering. Her whole body felt like it had run a marathon. Nadine gave her a nod of approval. Julia squeezed her hand. Adam from the back row offered a quiet thumbs up. Across the room, Blake sat with his jaw clenched, his lawyer whispering something furiously in his ear. Whatever script Blake had planned, Lena had just torn it in half. An hour later, the judge returned with a decision. The court finds that Mr. Nathaniel has not demonstrated a meaningful interest in the welfare of the child prior to this proceeding, she said, voice firm. Given the evidence of domestic abuse, current incarceration, and the testimony of the petitioner, this court rules in favor of Ms. Holloway. Blake's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we request at least supervised visitation. Denied. Blake stood then, knocking over his chair. He opened his mouth to speak, but the bailiff stepped in. Sir, sit down. The judge didn't even look at him. Full legal and physical custody is granted to Lena Grace Holloway. This court recommends therapy and continued protection. Case closed. Outside the courthouse, Lena stood under a cloudless sky. It felt surreal, as if the world had changed shape, but no one had told the weather. Hope slept in Julia's arms, her tiny face soft and unaware. Lena turned to Adam. I won, she whispered. He smiled. You did. No, I mean, I won. For the first time in my life, I didn't just survive, I fought. Adam stepped closer. And you won because you never gave up. Even when everything in you wanted to. She looked at him, truly looked. And for the first time since all this began, Lena believed something she never thought she would. That she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And for her, and for Hope, that was just the beginning. The storm had passed, but Lena didn't feel lighter. Not yet. It had been 4 days since the court granted her full custody. 4 days since Blake was led out of the courtroom in silence, his face contorted with the fury of a man who had lost the one thing he could no longer control. Everyone had called it a victory, a win, a miracle. And it was. But victory didn't feel like balloons and sunshine. It felt like exhaustion, like waking from a nightmare, only to realize you've been clenching your fists for so long, your hands forgot how to open. Lena sat on the back steps of the shelter that afternoon, Hope nestled against her chest in the sling. The baby was humming softly, not quite asleep, her small hand fisted in the collar of Lena's sweatshirt. She smelled like warm milk and baby lotion. It should have brought Lena comfort. Instead, she felt raw. She didn't know how to stop being on edge. The shelter had become quieter since the hearing. Julia and Nadine had encouraged Lena to take some time to rest. Adam had offered to handle all the early morning feedings. Even a few of the other residents, women who rarely spoke above a whisper, had stopped to offer a kind word. You did, Ida once said, patting Lena's shoulder awkwardly. You're braver than I ever was, another added. Lena nodded, smiled, whispered, Thank you. But inside, she didn't feel brave. She felt cracked open. Because when the fight is all, what happens after the fighting ends? Adam found her on the steps later that afternoon. He didn't say anything right away, just sat beside her a respectful distance apart and handed her a coffee in a paper cup. You haven't been outside much, he said gently. I'm outside now. You haven't been you much either. Lena stared at the yard. It was sunny. There were dandelions in the grass, and Hope was still warm against her. She wanted to feel joy, relief, something light. But all she felt was weight. I don't know who I am without the fear, she admitted, her voice low. Adam took a slow sip of his coffee. That makes sense. Fear's been your armor. You wore it so long it felt like skin. She looked at him. You're good with words. I used to be worse. Pain taught me the rest. There was silence for a while, and Lena was grateful he didn't try to fix her. He didn't give her a list of things to be grateful for. He didn't throw her a pep talk. He just sat there, breathing in time with her, holding space. Finally, Lena asked, "Do you think I'll ever feel normal again?" Adam smiled softly. "I don't know about normal, but peace? Yeah, it comes, slowly, like the tide coming back." That night she couldn't sleep. Hope was restless too, as if sensing the shift in the air. Lena walked her up and down the hallway, humming lullabies she barely remembered the words to. Eventually, Hope dozed in her arms, and Lena stood in the moonlight pouring through the hallway window, watching the dust motes drift like tiny spirits. She wondered if Blake had watched her like this once, from the shadows, from the bed, from the doorway, always there waiting for her to slip up. Now he was gone. The judge had denied visitation, supervised or not. There would be no more letters, no surprise court summons, no secret agents delivering messages under the guise of friendship. But freedom didn't arrive like a switch flipping on. It arrived like this: a quiet hallway, a tired baby, a long breath that didn't quite hurt to take. The next morning, Julia approached her during breakfast. "We've been talking about transitioning you into the independent housing wing," she said, handing her a folder. Lena blinked. "What?" "You've got full custody, a stable record here, and the courts are satisfied with your case plan. It's time, Lena." Lena opened the folder. Inside were photos of a small apartment attached to the shelter property. 2 rooms, a kitchenette, a shared courtyard where other moms lived with their kids while rebuilding their lives. It looked like a real home. I'm not sure I'm ready," Lena whispered. "You're more than ready," Julia said. "But we'll help you ease in. You won't be alone. You'll just have room to breathe, to start new patterns." Lena closed the folder, her heart pounding. She had been sleeping with one foot on the floor for so long, ready to run, always ready to run. Could she actually unpack her things? Hang photos? Let herself belong somewhere? Later that day, Adam found her sitting beneath the old oak tree in the courtyard, the folder still in her hands. "I saw Julia talking to you," he said, dropping into the grass beside her. "Big news?" "She thinks I'm ready to move into one of the transition apartments." "She's right." Lena looked up at the branches overhead. "I'm scared. You wouldn't be human if you weren't. I don't know how to just live, without hiding, without watching every corner." Adam leaned back on his elbows. "Then we learn together." She glanced at him, surprised. He shrugged. "I'm still figuring it out too. What it means to feel safe, to trust people, to wake up without a fight waiting for me." Lena searched his face. "Why are you still here?" she asked softly. "You got clean. You could leave. You could go anywhere." He looked at her without hesitation. "Because this is the first place that ever made me believe I'm more than my mistakes. And because there's someone here, I'm not ready to leave." Her breath caught. She didn't say anything, but the look that passed between them said more than enough. That night, Lena laid Hope down in the crib beside her and turned out the light. The room was quiet. No locks on the door, no shouting from the hallway, no fear curled in her gut like a storm waiting to break. Just silence. And in that silence, she whispered aloud, "I don't know if I'm healed, but I'm not broken either." The next morning, she moved into her new apartment. She and Hope unpacked, clothes, books, toys. They set up her bed, made the crib, and placed a framed picture of Hope's ultrasound on the nightstand. Lena lit a lavender candle. She stood in the middle of the tiny kitchen, looked around, and realized this was theirs. This was home. Adam came by later that afternoon with a small plant in a clay pot. "Housewarming gift," he said, holding it out sheepishly. Lena took it, smiling. "It's alive. That's risky. He chuckled. Just like us. They sat on the small couch, Hope dozing between them, and watched the light spill through the curtain. No words needed. Not yet, but something had shifted. The storm had passed. The ground was still soft, but the sky was open, and for the first time Lena wasn't bracing for lightning, she was planting roots. Lena woke to the sound of birdsong. Not sirens, not slamming doors, not raised voices or the scream of tires on pavement. Just the simple, soft call of birds in the courtyard trees and the gentle rustle of wind through the open window. It should have been peaceful. It was peaceful. But peace, she'd learned, wasn't always easy to trust. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Hope was still asleep in her crib across the room, her breath steady and rhythmic, her tiny hands curled into fists beneath her chin. The morning light slipped through the curtains in ribbons, painting golden lines across the hardwood floor. Lena closed her eyes and tried to slow her breathing. 1, 2, 3. You're safe, she told herself. You're safe. Still, the echo of old fears pressed against the walls of her mind, whispering the things she used to believe were truths. He'll come back. You don't deserve this. Something always goes wrong. It wasn't that she missed Blake. God, no. She hadn't felt longing for him in years, if ever. But trauma had a way of imprinting itself on your bones like a phantom limb. You could cut the toxic connection, erase the man from your life, but the memories, they stayed. They showed up, in dreams where he grabbed her wrist again, in sudden flinches when someone knocked too hard on the door, in the way she double-checked the locks at night. He was gone. But he still haunted the spaces between peace. Later that morning, Julia stopped by with a box. This came for you, she said, placing it on the counter. Lena raised an eyebrow. From who? No return address. Just a note from the postal clerk that it was dropped off yesterday. Julia paused. I checked it first, just in case. Lena felt a flicker of old panic, then gratitude. She took a breath and opened the box. Inside were several items wrapped in soft fabric. An old, tattered baby book with the name Lena Marie Holloway handwritten on the inside. A tiny silver bracelet with a heart charm. And a letter. The envelope had no name on the front. Just the word, forgive. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Lena, I don't expect this to undo the past. I just hope it helps you understand it. I know I wasn't there when I should have been. I know I made choices that hurt you more than I ever intended. I was scared. Not of you. Of myself. Of failing you the way my mother failed me. And instead of facing that fear, I ran. I numbed myself. I let other people convince me you were better off without me. But I see now. I was a coward. This box has what little I saved from when you were a baby. I've carried it from city to city, through rehabs, shelters, jobs. I always thought one day I'd have the courage to send it. Today is that day. I'm 3 years sober now. Working at a library, I read about your court case online. It's how I found the shelter. I don't expect anything, just maybe one day, if you're willing, I'd like to meet Hope. If not, that's okay. I just wanted to say I love you, I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Mom Lena sat in stunned silence. She hadn't heard from her mother in nearly a decade. She'd long assumed she was either dead or lost to addiction forever. She had buried the memory of her mother deep, too deep to confront most days. The woman who'd bounced between boyfriends and crack houses, who'd left Lena home alone at 5 years old with nothing but crackers and dry cereal. The woman who'd screamed through locked doors and disappeared for weeks at a time. And yet here was this letter. Soft, sad, human. Lena didn't know what to do with it. Her hands shook as she traced the edge of the old baby book. There was a picture taped inside. Her, a few weeks old, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Her mother looked young, softer, healthier. She was smiling in a way Lena didn't remember. She saved this, Lena thought. She kept this all these years. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Not yet. But something in her chest shifted, like a door unlocking. That night, after Hope was asleep, Lena sat outside on the porch with Adam. She handed him the letter without speaking. He read it quietly, eyes scanning the page twice before folding it carefully and handing it back. "Wow," he said. "I don't know how to feel. That's allowed. She was horrible to me, Adam. She was reckless and cruel and absent. I used to wake up and pray she hadn't overdosed. I stole food from neighbors' porches. I got suspended in 2nd grade for biting another kid over a sandwich." Adam didn't flinch. "And now she wants to be part of my daughter's life?" Lena asked, shaking her head. "What if she hurts Hope? What if she relapses again? I don't owe her anything." "No, you don't." Lena looked up at him. "But," he continued gently, "you might owe yourself the space to decide. Not for her, not for Hope. For you." She let the silence settle. "She kept the bracelet," she whispered. "She wrote a letter that didn't ask for anything, just offered the truth. That counts for something, right?" Adam nodded. "It counts for something. Not everything. Not absolution. But something." Over the next few days, Lena found herself rereading the letter more than she wanted to admit. She didn't tell Hope, of course not. Hope was too young, too innocent. But Lena began to wonder what forgiveness actually looked like. Not for her mother's sake, but for her own. She'd fought so hard for survival, built so many walls. What would it look like to open the door to something complicated? Something that might break her heart again, but also possibly stitch part of it back together. Forgiveness didn't mean trust. It didn't mean erasing the past, but it might mean letting go of the weight. By the weekend, she wrote a letter of her own. "Mom, I got your package, thank you. I don't know what this means for us yet, but I read every word, and I believe you meant them. I don't know if I'm ready for a visit, but I'm open to writing back, for now. I don't forgive you yet, but I'm thinking about what that might feel like. I'll send pictures of Hope." Lena, she dropped the letter at the shelter's mailbox before she could change her mind. As she walked back to her apartment, she felt the wind pick up. A cool breeze, brushing hair from her face, rustling leaves, in the courtyard trees. Something in her chest loosened. Not peace. Not yet. But breathing room. A little more space between the past and the present. A little more courage to imagine a future where she wasn't just a survivor, but someone becoming whole. The fire crackled in the old metal pit in the center of the shelter's courtyard, sending flickers of amber light into the cool spring night. Lena stood a few steps back, holding Hope against her chest. Adam was kneeling nearby, feeding another, logged to the flames, his face glowing orange in the light. It was a community night, Julia's idea. A chance for residents and staff to share stories, roast marshmallows, and feel like people again instead of cases or trauma survivors. Someone had brought a portable speaker, playing soft acoustic music that mingled with the smell of smoke and toasted sugar. Hope stirred in her sling, making a soft, cooing noise. Lena kissed the top of her head. Adam looked over his shoulder and smiled. "She likes the firelight." Lena nodded, her lips curving faintly. "Or maybe she just likes the calm." He stood and joined her. "And you? How are you holding up?" She hesitated, then offered the truth. "Tired, but less brittle." Adam chuckled. "That's poetic. It's also accurate." They stood in silence, watching the fire, the kind that doesn't feel awkward, the kind that feels like breathing next to someone who understands your rhythms. Finally, Lena spoke again. "I haven't had many nights like this. Normal ones. No shouting. No broken glass. No checking the door every hour." Adam's voice was low. "Me neither." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment she felt exposed. Not in a dangerous way, but in the kind of way that made your heart ache a little. Like someone seeing the cracks in your armor and not turning away. "You ever think," he said softly, "that we survive so long in the dark, we forget how to trust the light?" Lena turned her gaze toward the fire. "All the time. Later. That evening, after Hope had fallen asleep back in their apartment, Lena found herself unable to sit still. She cleaned the already tidy kitchen, rearranged the bookshelf, wiped the countertops again. The weight of the night pressed in. Not in a bad way, just heavy, a different kind of heavy. Adam had lingered outside by the fire after everyone else drifted off. Part of her wanted to join him. Part of her told her to stay put, keep the distance, keep it safe. But another part, the one she'd been learning to listen to lately, said maybe it was time to take one small step. She wrapped a cardigan around her shoulders and walked back out into the courtyard. Adam was still there, seated on a bench with his hands clasped between his knees. The fire had burned low, the flames now soft and flickering like the last words of a good story. He looked up. As she approached, "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Lena shook her head. Too quiet. Adam scooted over to make room, and she sat beside him. Their shoulders didn't touch, but they were close enough for warmth. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Lena whispered, "Sometimes I think I forgot how to be a person." Adam turned toward her. "You're more human than most people I've ever met." She gave him a wry smile. "You don't even know the worst parts of me. Don't need to. I've seen the best." Her breath caught. It would have been easier if he'd flirted, if he'd made a joke or tried to charm her, but he didn't. He just said it like a truth, like a fact he'd studied and knew by heart. She stared into the embers. "I'm scared," she admitted, barely louder than the crackle of wood. Of what? Of being soft again. Of loving someone who might leave. Of trusting something good and watching it fall apart. He nodded. "That's fair. I don't know how to be in something healthy. I don't even know how to want it without waiting for it to disappear." Adam leaned back, gazing up at the stars. "I used to think love had to be loud, explosive, dramatic. But that wasn't love. It was chaos. It was trauma calling out to trauma." Lena closed her eyes. "Yeah. But this," he added, voice quieter. "Sitting here, breathing next to someone and not needing to run, that feels closer to real." She opened her eyes and looked at him. His face was lit by the fire, but softened by the dark. Vulnerable. Honest. "I think about you," she said, surprising herself. Adam didn't flinch. Didn't. "Yeah? Yeah. When you're not around. When something good happens and I wish I could tell you first. When Hope smiles a certain way that reminds me she's safe now." He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "I think about you too. All the time." A silence fell between them again, charged and full. Finally, Lena asked, "Do you ever worry we're too broken for this?" Adam turned toward her again. "All the time. And I think maybe we're not supposed to be perfect. Maybe we're just supposed to show up, try, tell the truth." Lena smiled, small and uncertain. "That sounds terrifying." "It is." She leaned slightly, resting her head on his shoulder. He tensed at first, then relaxed, and she could feel the beat of his heart slow and steady. "You don't have to fix me," she murmured. "I wouldn't dare. And I don't need rescuing." "I know." She let out a shaky breath. "But it's nice, not to feel alone." Adam laid his cheek gently against the top of her head. "You never were, Lena." They stayed like that for a long while. No big declarations. No rush. Just two people who'd been forged in fire, finding peace in its glow. Eventually, the embers died down, and the chill in the air returned. Lena stood and offered Adam her hand. "Walk me back?" He took it without hesitation. As they crossed the courtyard, something inside her shifted again, not like a door swinging open, but like a window cracking just enough to let the breeze in. She wasn't healed, she wasn't whole, but maybe, just maybe she wasn't alone anymore. And maybe that was enough for now. The sky was blushing pink when Lena stood on the threshold of her new life. Not metaphorically, but literally. She was at the edge of the little community garden behind her apartment, where she and Hope had been planting tulips and carrots. The morning sun caught on her daughter's curls as she toddled ahead, one chubby hand wrapped around a plastic trowel, the other clutching a dandelion like it was treasure. There was something sacred about this moment. No screaming, no fear, just the quiet miracle of ordinary life. Hope squealed with joy as she spotted a ladybug and squatted to examine it. Lena smiled, crouching beside her. She let the warmth of the sun soak into her skin and thought about how far they had come. A year ago, she had been sleeping on a thin mattress in a shelter, waking to nightmares and wondering if peace was something only other people ever got to touch. But now, she was holding it in her hands, and she knew this was only the beginning. The week before, Lena had finally signed the lease on her own apartment, a bright, cozy place on the second floor of a converted brownstone. It wasn't extravagant, but to her it was palatial. No shared walls with strangers, no fear of being evicted without notice, and best of all, no Blake. Julia had cried when Lena showed her the keys. Adam had bought a houseplant and named it Fred. Hope had danced on the new living room floor while Lena laughed until she couldn't breathe. It felt surreal, like she was watching someone else's happy ending. But it was hers. She had worked for it, fought for it, earned it, and now she was living it. That night, after putting Hope to bed, Lena stood in the kitchen pouring herself a cup of tea. The walls were painted pale blue, and there were sunflowers on the table, her favorite flower. A little gift from Adam. He was due to arrive any minute. They were celebrating, not just the apartment, not just survival, but love. It had grown slowly between them, like moss on stone, steady, patient, real. There was no sweeping romance or grand declarations, just quiet gestures, dinners shared, stories told, secrets confessed in whispers during long walks. Lena had been afraid to call it love at first, but that's what it was. Not a rescue, not a fantasy, just love. Messy, honest, healing. The doorbell rang. She opened the door to find Adam holding a pizza box and wearing a crooked smile. "I brought fuel for celebration," he said. "You mean emotional carbs," she teased. "Exactly." They sat cross-legged on the living room floor, plates in their laps, candles flickering on the windowsill. The room still smelled like fresh paint and rosemary. Adam took a bite, then looked around. "This place feels like you." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Messy and small?" He laughed. "No, warm, calm, like a place you'd go to remember who you are." She felt her throat tighten. "Sometimes I forget," she admitted softly. Adam reached over and took her hand. "Then I'll remind you." Later, as they sat in the quiet with Hope asleep down the hall, Lena pulled out a stack of papers. "What's this?" Adam asked. She hesitated. "A scholarship application." His eyes widened. "For?" "Social work," she said, nerves fluttering in her stomach. "I want to help women like me. People who've been through the fire and are still standing." Adam grinned. "Lena, that's incredible. I don't know if I'll get it. You'll get it. And even if you don't, you'll still change lives." She looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the man who had helped her heal, but the future she once thought she'd never deserve. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For staying." Adam kissed her hand. "Always." A week later, Lena sat down with Hope in her lap, and her phone set up on a tripod. She looked into the lens and smiled nervously. "Hi everyone, if you're seeing this, you've probably followed our journey for a while. Or maybe this is your first time here. My name is Lena and this is Hope." The toddler waved at the camera with a delighted squeal. "I used to think my story was over," Lena continued. "I thought survival was the best I could hope for. But I've learned that survival is just the beginning. Healing takes time. It takes patience. And it takes people who believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself." She paused. "There are people out there who are still in the darkness. And if that's you, I want you to hear me clearly. It does get better. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You are worthy of love, safety, and peace. Hope clapped her hands beside her, giggling. And if you followed our story and found any piece of hope, healing, or truth in it, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Book Tales. It's where I'll keep telling the stories that matter, the ones that remind us we're never alone. She leaned in a little closer to the camera. Until next time, be kind to yourself. And remember, every ending is just a new beginning waiting to unfold. That night, the video went live. Within hours, comments began to pour in. Strangers from all over the world shared their own stories of heartbreak and healing, of second chances and quiet courage. Some were still in the storm. Others had made it out. All of them said the same thing. Thank you. Lena closed her laptop and looked out the window. The moon hung low over the rooftops, casting silver light across the city. Somewhere out there, people were waking up in fear. Others were falling asleep in peace. And some, like her, were learning how to live in between. She picked up Hope, who had stirred in her sleep, and held her close. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We're safe." Hope nestled into her shoulder, and Lena felt it again. That quiet, powerful thing she never thought she'd hold. Peace. And just beneath it, something even bigger. Purpose. The end. If you loved this story and want more stories of healing, redemption, justice, and unexpected turns of fate, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Buck Tales. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts that need them. Subscribe now. Share with someone who needs hope. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter of Light in the Dark. Thank you for being part of our journey. Until next time, keep believing in new beginnings.